DJs, learn how to set up your speakers. On this episode, I speak with Michael Doucot, the marketing manager for the entire US region for Electro-Voice, and we discuss the best way to set up DJ speakers and some of the mistakes DJs often make when setting up sound reinforcement. So let's check out the interview and get into it. From your experience, what are some typical pitfalls DJs run into when setting up or tuning their speakers? And how do Electro-Voice's features or your recommended best practices help them avoid these mistakes?
Okay, good one. Speaker placement plays a big role. I think one thing that a lot of DJs don't realize is how important it is, or how much, not necessarily important, but how much the environment plays a role in what things sound like. Plays a huge role in how things sound. If you're in a very reverberant space with windows and marble floors and things like that, that's an acoustical nightmare, right? If you have domed
Yeah.
ceilings, that's a different set of challenges. If you're outdoors, that's a different set of challenges. If you're elevated or, there's a million different scenarios out there, and every venue is going to be different, and every venue is going to make you sound differently. So having a good working knowledge of audio and how to deal with different locations certainly makes uh, gives you a working knowledge to be able to make the best out of any situation, right? The first thing I would tend to do, tell most DJs is, a good rule of thumb for me is point the loud part at the people, right? That's pretty self-explanatory, but obviously you're going to face the speakers in the direction of your audience. But when I say that, I'm trying to dig at something a little bit deeper in that. Um, uh, Pointing the loud part at the people is a good rule of thumb, but I would say only point the loud part at the people. Um, because the issue is sometimes DJs don't take into account the coverage pattern of the loudspeakers that they're using, and depending on where they're set up, that could be pretty detrimental. For instance, the Evolve family, they're designed to have a 120-degree horizontal dispersion, right? Fairly wide. Um, that could be a problem if you're tucked into a corner that's
Yeah.
maybe only a 90-degree corner, and now my speakers are right here next to me, and my speakers are literally, because they're 120-degree coverage, you're right away, you're slamming right into the walls right next to you, right? Um, at the same time, if you had a little more open space, right, that could get you where are the tables positioned? Where are people going to be, right? Um, and so when I say that, I ask, I try to say, take into account what you're doing at different stages of the event. Where is your setup, right? And what goals do you want to achieve, right? Maybe early on in the evening for speech, or for background music and things like that, it would make sense to have a wide, even coverage throughout the room so everybody's getting very consistent results and hearing the same thing with clarity. Um, at the same time, maybe later on in the evening, where that energy is focused up on the dance floor, and you really want to have maybe more of a nightclub feel right in front of where you're performing, right on the dance floor. Maybe you want that even more concentrated, and you want a much louder experience to get that feel for the music, during the dance. But maybe you also want to create a space for those who aren't engaging with that. Maybe there's a place in the back of the room for, older couples or people who aren't dancing to be able to talk and hang out and still be a part of the experience, but not get their faces torn off because you're at 110 dB on the dance floor, right? Um, so understanding that coverage and where you want different things to happen. I can tell you a lot of venues um, really appreciate it when systems are designed to keep the loud parts away from wherever the bar is, right? Especially in nightclubs and things of that nature, right? Um, we're very careful to try to steer that audio away from where the bar is, because you got a packed club and it's loud as hell in there. Hearing those drink orders fast and and moving along quickly, right, prints money for that venue owner, right? If every drink order is slowed down by another 20, 30 seconds throughout the course of a night, you're losing real money, because the the bartenders literally can't hear, what people are trying to tell them they want to buy, right? Um, so when I say point the loud part at the people, that's always a really good rule of thumb. But also be mindful of how loud you're playing, right? Some people try to fight acoustical problems with more volume, right? If it's really echoey and things don't sound good, right? People will a lot of people will have a tendency to push their system even harder and louder and harder and louder, because then because of their proximity to their speakers, it starts to drown out what's happening in the room for them, right? Because
Mhm.
you're hearing more of your speaker at that point. But what, in essence, what you're really doing is just throwing more energy against the walls and the ceiling and everything else. And it's just exciting that room even more. So while it may feel like things are getting better for you right there, just putting that more energy in that room could have that counterproductive effect and actually make things worse. So be mindful of your levels. Don't try to fight acoustical problems. If the room sucks, there's only so much you can do. You can't really fix acoustical problems with electronic stuff. You can change EQ, you can do things like that, but that tends to just shift the problem somewhere else and make things worse. So you can't really do that. The best way to solve any acoustical problems in your room is really to try to work with what the room is giving you, right? And understand that it's going to maybe sound different when you first set up earlier in the day and there's no one there to hopefully things would improve later on that night, and there's, you know 300 human bags of water in the room dancing around, right? We humans are great sound absorption. So you fill up the room, it'll sound a lot different than when it did earlier in the night. Those sort of things, keep those in mind. Another big one DJs have is subwoofer placement. There's a lot of things to take to consider there. I won't get into all the details there, because that's a wormhole we could talk about for hours for real. But what I would recommend people do is just be mindful of your subwoofer placement, learn a little bit about that, and understand that at the same time, the cold hard reality is most of the time you're faced with a situation where you have to set up in a certain place, because that's what the situation dictates, right? Could be
Yeah.
that's where the electrical outlet is, could be that's where the dance floor is, could be that's where the bride wants you to be. And so regardless if it would sound better if you set up over there or over there, you know what? Too bad. Yeah, it is a wedding. Aesthetics matter. And
Yep.
yes, you should do your best to achieve, as good a sound. But the reality is, if you're an audio professional, you're dealing with whatever situation is dictated to you. And that's just the way it is, right? It's your
Yeah.
job to optimize that as best you can. It's not your job to go in there and to dictate the terms to the venue and to the bride and everybody else, and like ride in on your high horse and say, well, this is how it's going to be. Well, no, you gotta do what's best overall for the situation. Acoustics play a role, and there are things that I would suggest you try to educate them as best you can if you see a real problem coming up. Right? If for whatever instance they had you set up in a portion of the room where um, guests were on one side and not the other, or whatever. um, especially for things like speeches or toasts or things like that, if you want to ensure that those sort of things are heard for the entire audience, you would need to take steps to ensure that that's possible, because that's probably, you could assume that a bride would want to hear, her her father's, father of the bride speech or things like that, right? So
Yeah.
making sure that those sort of things are covered, the most important things are covered, and having those conversations up front. But the more you can learn about those things, the better. A great resource, I can send you the link and put it in the video. Um, EV has written a document. Several engineers have written a document called the EV PI, excuse me, the PA Bible, and
Ah,
several chapters about audio. And this is a document that's been updated over the years. It started probably 40, 50 years ago, maybe, but it's now all PDF. But something that our engineers have written over time, and a lot of those same acoustic principles still apply today. Some of the references are funny because they refer to some weird bands or things like that that are like, well, clearly dated, but the principles hold true. We'll share that link, and it's a great place to start. But there's a lot of audio resources out there if people really do want to learn more. Highly encourage them to do it.
yeah, I would love to get that. I would love to put the link in the description. Main goal of this channel is to educate and help people, and I think the PA Bible will be a huge help.
Yeah, yeah, it's a great resource to read. If you want to go even further than that, there are online courses, that audio professionals take. There's again, I'll send you the link, a training group called SynodCon, short for Synergetic Audio Concepts. But they have some great audio training courses, that we actually give to a lot of our new hires here and have them take those courses. It's part of the education I had when I first started working at EV, and still do brush up with them from time to time. They're a great resource, so we'll share that one also.
Awesome, awesome. I appreciate that, man.
Yeah, man.
As always, if you made it to the end of this video, I'd like to say thank you so much for watching. If you found anything valuable in the content, please feel free to subscribe to the channel. We have a bunch of videos talking about the tech that we use as DJs, with a lot more coming down the pipeline. My name is Seth, aka DJ Seth V. This is DJ Tech Tips. Thank you for watching, and we out.